start with the astrological update. Okay. So once again, if you know your chart, keep your chart in mind while we go through this. If you don't, that's okay. These energies are still going to be influencing you and affecting you in some form. And I want to say that overall, I like to know what's going on specifically with the moon phases, because we're all affected by the moon in so many different ways. And that energy is going to come into our lives. Really, no matter what sign you are, no matter what sign your moon's even in. If the moon's in a specific sign, it's definitely going to be bringing in a very specific type of energy. And we're going to use this again to kind of go into what we need to do for ourselves to kind of align and with the energies that are around us. So let's just start. The moon will be going into the sign of Aries on May 9th. So let's just talk a little bit about Aries. Right. So first, the moon energy is a very emotional and a very intuitive energy. It affects us very deeply because you've got to remember that the body is 75% water and the moon affects the tides. So it's affecting you internally and externally all the time. So the constellation that it goes into brings forth an energy, brings forth a character. So it's going into Aries, okay? And Aries is go, 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 go. Aries, there's a great saying about Aries, and it says, if you want to get something done, ask an Aries to do it, because Aries is the pioneer. They're the go-getters. They're reaching forward. So the moon's going to be in Aries. So don't be surprised if you start feeling like, oh, I'm going to go do that project I've been holding off for a while, or you start getting a little pep in your step. That's that Aries energy. However, Aries is also ruled by Mars, okay? And Mars can sometimes be the planet of anger. So there could, and it's in the moon. So, if you've got some anger that starts coming up the next few days from things that are just unresolved in your life, understand that Mars is, the ruling planet of Aries. So it could be part of that energy that you're feeling too. I also want to say that Mars is also about the physical body. It's also about sexuality. So some of you could be feeling a little bit more sexual than you were before when it's in that moon, but also it's the physical body. So you might find yourself wanting to, all of a sudden work out or go for a longer walk than you usually go to, or for. So, the physical body is going to start to feel like it wants a little pep in its step as well. So just keep that in mind. Now, the signs and constellations don't stay in the moon for very long. So, it'll be there for, a short period of time, but you may want to utilize it. Because on May 11th, we're going to go into a new moon, and that's going to be in Taurus. So how does that change things for you a little bit? Well, Taurus is very different than Aries. Taurus is very stable and it's very sturdy. It's an earth energy, where Aries is a fire energy, right? So that earth energy is going to start coming in, and you might start, slowing down a little bit and wanting to get a little bit more rooted and grounded. But Taurus is also about what we value in our lives. What we value in the external world and what we value in the internal world. It's both. So you may be questioning, what am I valuing? What am I putting my value into, inside and outside? And that starts with the new moon on May 11th. Now, in astronomy, a new moon, right? It marks the first lunar phase. It marks the start of a new lunar phase. So this is all about new beginnings, achieving goals, new projects. Every time there's a new moon, you want to start writing down these new goals, these new projects. Again, internal and external. We're not just talking about external goals. We're also talking about internal goals. So things that you want to change, things that you want to work on your internal self, but also those projects in the outside world that you want to start or begin. Now, it's in Taurus, this new moon. So Taurus, is an earth sign. So it's more slow, it's more steady. It's not like Aries. Now, the new moon's not going to be in Aries. The moon's going to be in Aries for a few days, but then when the new moon comes, we're going to go into Taurus. So these goals, these desires are things that you probably have to marinate on, and that may take time to build or to cultivate, because Taurus is an earth energy, and anything that's an earth energy, we usually need to put a little bit of time into. But just be aware that come May 11th, the new moon begins, and we're in that Taurian energy. So if you've got a goal, if you've got projects, start thinking about those things, writing them down. Part of this is about even just discovering what those things are. What kind of projects do you want to start? What kind of goals do you want to achieve? It's the beginning of the brainstorming process, the creation process, when the new moon is with us. Now, we're going to go into a full moon on May 26th, and then that full moon is going to be in Sagittarius. So you've got all this time in the Taurus, new moon, to think of new ideas, to write these ideas down, to begin the brainstorming process. In the full moon, which by the way is also going to be a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, the energy starts to change a little bit, right? Let's first talk about Sagittarius. Sagittarius is all about freedom, and it's all about taking risks, and it's all about adventure, right? So it's kind of nice to have this lunar eclipse in Sagittarius right after the Taurus, because the Taurus new moon, because this is now where we can initiate, right? We want to initiate things in the full moon. So while the new moon is a time to set intentions, for the future, and launch new projects, the full moon is a time of culmination and fruition. So the full moon is when, okay, now I've got my ideas. You got your ideas in the new moon, you marinated on them, you started making your list. Now in that full moon, you want to start culminating these things. You want to start manifesting these things. You want to start doing to bring these things into manifestation. Now it's in Sagittarius. So that's a great sign for it to be in, because Sagittarius is another mover and it's another shaker. And it's also not afraid to take risks. So don't be afraid to take risks with whatever these projects and new ideas are when this lunar eclipse comes and that full moon in Sagittarius, because that energy will really be supporting you in that process. Now, your energy from the last lunar cycle will be cleansed in the new lunar cycle, giving you a spiritual clean slate. You got to remember, every time you go from a new moon to a full moon, and a new lunar cycle begins, eventually, it goes through a path, you can begin anew, you can cleanse anew. So you can do this every single month. And I'm going to kind of compare this to our moon cycle as females. As females, we have a moon cycle, and every month we're cleansing. That there's a cleansing process that's going on. We can do this internally and externally with our own evolution, with our own spiritual development. We can do the same thing using these moon cycles. So understand that at this time too, through these phases, if there are things that you want to let go of, if there are things about your internal self, or even things in your external world that are no longer serving you and you want to cleanse them, it's also a good time to do that. So a lunar eclipse is very, very transformative. And it's a time, though, that can bring some abrupt and some sudden changes. So I always like to say this, if there's things in our lives, internally or externally, that need to change, and we just don't want to do it, or being stubborn, and a lunar eclipse comes along, you may not have a choice. It may suddenly bring you to that space. It may abruptly bring those changes in. That's why with the new moon, you really want to take the time, when the new moon is in Taurus, to really think about the things that you want to manifest, the things that you want to change, and marinate on it, so that by the time this lunar eclipse comes in Sagittarius, maybe you won't experience such a sudden and abrupt change, because you're already preparing yourself for the shift, because the moon phases bring shifts again and again and again. So again, that lunar eclipse is in Sagittarius. So the freedom adventurer, that's who it is. And it's also about expansion beyond limiting belief systems. So one of the things you might want to do in the new moon, again, is to try to write down the parts of you that are limited, the belief systems that you have that might be limiting you. Because when that lunar eclipse comes in Sagittarius, you're going to have the opportunity to go beyond those beliefs, to transform those belief systems. So it's a good time for you to be able to utilize that.